Hey, what's happening, Roland? Well, hey, today's Friday, and it's time for the Friday update. And guess what? It's 2 days before Christmas. It's the end of December, and the fishing's red hot. There's a bunch of things coming on. There's a giant cold front hitting the rest of the country. It's going to be here just, in fact, this afternoon. That's a good thing. It's a good thing for the upcoming fishing. I'll talk about that in a minute. But let's talk about what happened last week. Okay, last week I was over at Headwaters for a couple times and really had some really great fishing. And the first thing that happened, I had some guys that did not want to fish shiners. They wanted to just fish lures. I said, okay, hey, I can fish lures as well as I can fish shiners. It's just that most people would rather maybe have their chance to catch a real trophy on a shiner because there is a better opportunity or a better chance to catch a monster bass on a shiner. And I'll show you that in a second too. But they wanted to catch nice fish and they wanted me to show them how to pitch and flip. So what I did, I took my regular pitching and flipping rod, my regular favorite rod, and I rigged it up with a nice little otter-looking creature bait. Sometimes I use the Yamamoto. Sometimes I use the reaction innovations. This is an otter-looking thing. Okay, 4/0 EWG, or actually a extra heavy cover worm hook. That's an ounce and a half weight, but sometimes we actually use some 2-ounce weights. This is the big favorite flipping stick. Okay, and what they wanted me to do was they wanted me to show them how I pitch and flip. And it was basically this opportunity. I came along the edges of the hydrilla and I'd look for little patches of say, other weeds, like say blown in hyacinths, blown in some type of weeds. And I'd throw in those little patches of hyacinths right at the edge of the grass, about 2 or 3 foot into the edge of the heavy hydrilla. I like to find an edge of a hydrilla that's kind of has open water to it, because it's kind of undercut underneath the hydrilla. The water's 6 or 7 feet deep where I'm fishing, and the hydrilla grows down about 3 or 4 feet, and the last foot or two on the bottom is open. So when you punch through there, and we call this flipping or pitching, but punching is another term. And so what we do, we take these heavy weights and throw back into the hydrilla 3 or 4 feet, particularly on the points, particularly where there's a little patch of hyacinths or some other kind of cover there as well. And then wiggle it through there and let it drop to the bottom. Now here's the whole key to flipping right now and catching big fish. The whole key is that initial fall, when it comes breaking through the canopy, that fish is going to react quickly. Fish they strike for a couple of different reasons. They're hungry, but they also strike because of reflex action. And see, reflexively, that bass is sitting there. He doesn't know there's anything around. It's like a cat and a mouse. If you took a ball and rolled it in front of a cat, boom, he's going to strike it. Reflex action. If you drop that crawl worm right by his face, bam, he's going to bite it. Just reflex action, because it's just right in front of his face. Okay, so what you have to do, you have to be kind of imaginative too. You have to imagine where that bass is. He's going to, number one, be facing the current. Okay, that's the first thing he's going to do. So which way is the wind blowing? He's going to be facing that way. The second thing, he's going to be shading his eyes. He's going to be in a shady spot. So if there's sun shining in on that edge, it's not going to be very good, because it might be too much sun underneath that edge there. So you need to find a shady side, or flip back far enough where you're in the shade. Okay, so shade, because they have non-eyelided eyes. Bass can't close their eyes. They got to have shade. Okay, and they got to face the current, because they can't swim backwards. Okay, the wind blows. Anytime the wind blows on these patches of hyacinths, there's current moving. It's just enough current where it's just their normal reaction. If the wind's blowing this way, they're just going to turn their body and just slowly swim into it. And so they're almost always facing the wind. Okay, now here's where you have to use your imagination. You have to look at a little patch of hyacinths and a little area, and you have to think, okay, he's facing the wind. He's off that little point. He's back in there about 3 foot. Let me get right in front of his face. And now you have to kind of imagine where he might be and just throw in there and drop it down. Remember, reflex action. The second that thing breaks the canopy, he's going to hit it. So you have to have your rod ready. Not too ready. And how I get my rod ready is this. And I was showing these guys how I did it. They were boys from Pennsylvania. Actually, Ohio. They were from Ohio. And so I put the rod, and this is that cushion button, and I put it on the base of all my rods, on my flipping sticks, and that really gives me a solid deal. I don't have the the upper body strength I used to have, but now with this technique, I have plenty of strength. So I put the rod here and I get the rod here. Now when it breaks the cover, I'm in a strike position. So when I see the line twitch, I set the hook. And this is 65-pound test braid, folks. This busts their butt. And sure enough, that particular day, we had 3 big 7-pound bass. And there was another kind of a deal. It's kind of a cloudy day, so they said, well, are there any other lures that they bite? I said, well, the flipping bite's real good. We've caught several big ones. They also bite a frog. So that particular day, which was just a few days ago, I took the Spro Pop 60. It's a 60 popper. It's a number 60. This happens to be the shad color, a nasty shad or whatever. And I kind of bend the hooks out just a little teeny bit with some pliers so they kind of stick out just a little bit. Again, 65-pound test braid, 65-pound test lead. This is a heavy-duty rod. This is that Emperor series, really heavy duty. Again, I'm making a cast, and what I'm trying to do in these holes in the hydrilla. If you notice where I fish, there's a lot of thick hydrilla and there's little open holes. I'm always throwing into the hydrilla. I never throw the frog into the open hole. The fish are in the open hole, but I don't throw the frog into the open hole. No. I throw the frog past the open hole, and I throw the frog to where it's in the grass. Now they hear it hit, and they hear something. They don't see anything much, and all of a sudden the frog is coming along, and it's now in the open hole. As soon as it gets to the open hole, they might be on the edge, and they might be in a shadow with that hole, and they can see it. So as soon as that frog comes into that open hole, stop it. Just let it sit there and twitch it a little bit, and twitch it a little bit. These little holes aren't very big, sometimes just 2 or 3 feet. So in about 5 or 6 seconds, if they haven't hit it, they probably won't hit it. So if they come through the hole, I just reel it in. I don't work it across that heavy hydrilla. I look through, and sometimes I'll just come to an edge of the hydrilla. Say there's a point, and say the wind's blowing in just right, just a little small amount. I'll throw the frog again to the hydrilla. Okay, I'll ease it along the hydrilla, kind of walk it along, and get to the open hole, stop it. Get ready for it. Now, when they bite it, you got to treat it a little bit like a worm because they suck it in half the time. They suck it in, and so you got a second or two. You don't have to set the hook quite as quick as you did, say, with the flipping deal. They suck down, get your rod in a position like a worm, and reel down and set the hook, and bam. Again, I usually use a cushion button. Now this one, I don't have the cushion button on, but I switch them around, and I put the cushion on that. And so when I'm frog fishing, I want a good solid hook set, and you got to just crank them out of there. Okay, so that was really what the deal was, and we caught some beautiful bass with the frog as well. So anyway, that was the big deal. Okay, now I mentioned to you plenty of good lure action, but the big fish are on shiners. Now you know how I'm doing it. I have all my shiner rods all set up, and I normally use favorite rods and reels, but I also like to use a clicker reel. This happens to be a Bass Pro Shop clicker reel, because what I can do now, when I put it in the rod holder and put the rod down, I could put the clicker on, and that is so important when I'm not watching what's happening, I'm not tending to other rods. That clicker is a big deal. So I'm trying to get favorite at some point to make a reel with the clicker. You can use any kind of reel for that matter. It's just that if you put your rod down and don't tend it as much as you need to have a clicker if you do that. Okay, so here, let me show you a picture of what we caught. I went out with these boys the other day, and this guy, he's a lawyer from New York City. He works in a pharmaceutical company, and his name is Carl Morales. And he and his 8-year-old son, Oscar, fished with me. And a little Oscar caught 21 bass just 2 days ago. And the father caught about 20 bass, and I caught a couple. I mainly just fished with them and set them up. But here's what the father caught. I have Carl's fish. I'm holding it. Look at that monster. Now that is what we call a shiner fish, son. That is as big as they get. He's just a tad, just an ounce or two less than 10 pounds. He's right at he's 9 3/4, but he's almost 10 pounds. He's just a gigantic fish. Now, we took pictures of the fish with Carl's camera, and I don't have the picture of Carl with the fish, but it was Carl that caught the fish. But I was helping him. I got the shiner, put it on, and I told him where to throw, and he did all that stuff, and he did a perfect job. But he caught it all by himself. And little Carl, little Oscar, not only did Carl catch that 10-pounder, but he also caught a 7-pounder, a couple 6-pounders. So he had a beautiful day. His little son caught one almost 6 pounds, a couple more 5-pound fish, his biggest ever. So what a day. It's so much, it's to see the enthusiasm of a little 8-year-old kid. And that's what we had the other day. The little Oscar was just so excited reeling the fish in. Sometimes if we were in a bunch of heavy hyacinths or big reeds, I'd have to kind of pull and help him a little bit. But basically, he caught them himself. And so we really had a ball. We really had a blast. So that's what happens when you use shiners versus lures. You catch that size fish, and that's just a trophy bass. Of course, it was an overcast, rainy day, and that also helps with everything we did. But in addition, I did show that there were some other fish to be caught. I caught a couple on one of my favorite lures, and that same day that I was fishing with Carl Morales, I took this old. I was showing him, it was real calm, and here is the deal. Now, I'm going to tell you what's going to happen this week. Okay, that's a great lure for spawning fish. That's that devil's horse. Okay, here's what's going to happen this week. This is a fishing report. This is my prediction. It's so important. A giant cold front's hitting. Christmas is 2 days away. About 2 or 3 days after Christmas, I've noticed the weather forecast for here. It's all starting to warm up again. The water temperature is going to go down to about 45 or 50 degrees. It's going to shut the fishing off, say Christmas Day, day after Christmas, maybe 2 days after Christmas. But about 3 days after Christmas, 4 days after Christmas, getting close to the new year, it's a warming trend. What have I told you about a warming trend? As the water warms up, it keeps getting warmer and warmer, and all of a sudden the fish come in to spawn, and there's going to be a spawn. It's going to be the first giant spawn. It'll be just before the new year. So if you want to catch a big fish, come on down. You can catch them on devil horse. You can catch them on shiner. You can flip them. The bass are going to be moving in strong just before the new year. That's my prediction. Okay, this is the time of the year to catch them. Well, anyway, that's my goal, and I'm looking for some great things for Christmas. I'm going over to Cloissa to visit my grandkids, and again, my little grandson Reed just graduated from college this last week, so that was a big deal. Okay, folks, that's what's happening right now. That's my prediction. Come down before the first of the year and catch some giant bass here in Florida. We'll see you again soon.